And we'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Girding.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Fink.
Here.
And we also have present Councilmember Zabel. And one of our staff director, Bob Streeter. And our city staff person, our liaison for the city is Shannon Reidlinger. So we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, the first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of our April 19th, 2021 meeting minutes. And I would ask our commissioners, if you have any changes in the meeting minutes, please bring them forward now. And if not, I would look for a motion to approve the April 19th, 2021 meeting minutes as written.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we will vote individually here because we're on Zoom. So Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Girding.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Fink.
Aye.
Meeting minutes are approved. All right, so this evening we're going to have our major part of our meeting is going to be management report. And we're going to have a report on the electric vehicle or EV ready community study. And Shannon Reidlinger has put together an excellent report here, and also some explanation of that report, a summary as well. So Shannon, I think I'm just going to turn it over to you. And thank you for all your work on this. This looks very interesting, and I hope we'll have a good discussion following your report.
Absolutely, thank you. So I wanted to start by mentioning that electric vehicles are included in the EMC's 2021 work plan, hence our discussion tonight. And the point of the conversation tonight is really to talk through the city's unique role in facilitating EV readiness. The city can do that through zoning and subdivision ordinances, through administrative processes, through incentivizing programs, and through our own fleet. There are a number of recommended action steps towards EV readiness that I'll be covering towards the end of the presentation. But before I get to that point, I did want to provide a little bit of context that is within the report itself, but is worth talking about in presentation format tonight. So I'm going to share my screen. And you should now see the title slide of this presentation. So, in the city's comprehensive plan, Chapter 8, Goal 1, It describes that the city is committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2025. And in Minnesota, the transportation sector in particular is a significant emitter of greenhouse gases. 25% of all sector, or of the transportation sector, emitted 25% of greenhouse gases in Minnesota in 2018. Within Oakdale, that was over 100,000 tons of greenhouse gases were emitted by vehicles traveling within the city's borders. Now, the city itself has committed to mitigation strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and one of those strategies is electric vehicles. Specifically in Chapter 8, Goal 1, Policy 6, it mentions that the city is committed to supporting private and public infrastructure that accommodates and encourages the use of electric and autonomous vehicles, and is committed to exploring options for city fleet use of EVs. Now, this idea of reducing greenhouse gas emissions through the transportation sector in particular, and through using electric vehicles, has quite a bit of precedent throughout the country. In Minnesota, the next generation, there is a statutory goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2025, very similar to what Oakdale's goal is. And in 2019, the governor mandated a rule that auto manufacturers are required to supply more battery electric and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles in the state of Minnesota. That is a zero emissions reduction rule that has a lot of similarities to other rules instituted in cities across the nation. Specifically in the United States, there is also climate change emission reduction goals that the president has recently come out with. So the federal government has instituted a plan of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50 to 52% by 2030. And one of the strategies to reduce those emissions is specifically electric vehicles. There are a number of different states and cities across the country that have committed to using electric vehicles to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And that is a goal that Oakdale can adopt as well. Internationally, quite a few different countries have mentioned the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions as well. And that strategy is completed by transitioning fleets to electric vehicles entirely. Quite a few cities and countries internationally have mentioned electric vehicles as one way to reduce climate change problems. So you can see here that quite a few auto manufacturers have responded to these policy mandates by producing many more battery-operated vehicles and plug-in electric vehicles. GM is just one auto manufacturer who has promised to transition its entire fleet to electric vehicles by a specific time. Volvo and Jaguar have also made these promises, but a number of more traditionally affordable auto manufacturers have also described that they will be transitioning their models to electric vehicles and offering more and more options to the consumer in the coming years. So there is a significant wave of electric vehicle ownership coming. This means that there's a prediction that by 2030 in America, about a quarter of all new car sales will be electric vehicles. This is a pretty similar forecast for the global car sales across the globe. Roughly 30% of new car sales by 2030 globally will be electric vehicles. So again, we know that this wave of electric vehicles is coming, and it's worthwhile for the city to be ready to support increased ownership. Now, that doesn't mean that electric vehicles are not currently in use in the region itself. Locally, we have seen a rising number in EV registrations and a rapid expansion of the charging station infrastructure in the Twin Cities. So you can see here in the table to the left, in Oakdale in particular, from 2018 to 2020, the number of EVs registered doubled from 29 to 57. In the cities directly surrounding Oakdale, the number of registrations between the same time period went from 198 to 439. And in Washington County, in just 1 year, the number of registered EVs jumped from 680 to 906. So even though these data are relatively recent, we can see that there are a number of people in the area who have adopted EVs already. And if any of the projections for EV growth nationally are to be believed, I think those numbers will increase quite a bit over the next few years. We also see that there is already existing a pretty significant charging station infrastructure to support the EVs that are already on the road. So here you can see that there are 205 publicly available charging destinations in the Twin Cities region. That accounts for 646 level 2 and 73 direct current fast charging ports. The graph itself on the right-hand side does a breakdown of those charging station destinations. You can see here that there are a lot of different places that electric vehicle owners in the Twin Cities region can plug in their EVs in a publicly available place. Now, this doesn't account for the huge number of charging stations that are private use. There may be employers across the country, across the region who provide charging for their employees, for example. There are plenty of people who have EVs at their own home who have charging stations installed. And so the network itself already is pretty robust and is poised to expand in the coming years. So again, electric vehicles are included in Oakdale's comprehensive plan as one method to mitigate the effects of climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with the city's goal. There are certain things that the city can do to facilitate readiness for electric vehicles as the use of EVs expands in Oakdale and the surrounding region. These 5 principles are very unique to the city or to municipalities in general, and it's a way for Oakdale to specifically say that we encourage electric vehicles and want to make access to them even more ubiquitous. So those 5 key principles are policy, zoning and subdivision ordinances, administration, programs, and city fleet use of EVs. With policy, the principle here is that EVs should be incorporated into our comprehensive plan. So the city of Oakdale has already taken one step towards EV readiness by specifically outlining electric vehicles as a mitigation strategy in our comprehensive plan. So we've already done the first thing to be EV ready. The next few slides will talk about the options that we have for continuing our progress towards becoming an EV ready community. Now, planning and zoning ordinances are, in my opinion, one of the most important EV-ready actions that the city can take. They build a foundation for EV readiness and they incorporate electric supply vehicle equipment into development and redevelopment. This table outlines the general suite of zoning ordinances that the city can look into adopting in the future. There will be more research necessary to understand exactly how these ordinances might play a role in the city's code, but there are a number of peer cities like Duluth, Golden Valley, St. Paul, and St. Louis Park that have already enacted some of these zoning and subdivision ordinances. So there's a way for us to look at comparable examples from peer cities and use that to serve as a foundation for our own ordinance amendments. The most important ones that I want to pull out from the table is permitting EVs charging stations as land use, really facilitating and establishing standards for design and construction of not just electric vehicle charging supply equipment, so the charging stations themselves, but also laying connectivity in new development. And then that last category of facilitating and establishing design standards for parking. Those are kind of the most critical components of zoning and subdivision ordinance amendments. Another EV ready action step is administration. So the whole process of installing charging stations for public and private use is made much more streamlined and easier for everyone all around when we have a very clear permitting process for electric vehicle supply equipment. The things that the city can do to help standardize that process is provide education to a whole host of audiences about what the installation guidelines are for EVSE, and then making the online permitting process, or making the permitting process an online option, because that just makes things a little bit cheaper, quicker, and more efficient. So those are kind of the two main steps that the city can take to facilitate EV readiness from an administrative standpoint. Another EV ready action is incentivizing programs. These programs help remove barriers to electric vehicles and infrastructure. And they just encourage EV ownership in general across the board. You can see here that there are, again, a number of different options for incentivizing programs. We have peers in a number of cities, Golden Valley, Edina, Red Wing, and St. Paul, who have instituted a couple of these different programs. So again, there's some best practices already in our own backyard. I think that the programs that I wanted to call out in particular that Oakdale may consider are these first four, and I'll kind of get to that in a little bit. When we think about installing charging stations across Oakdale, the installation of those charging stations falls into this bucket of incentivizing programs. This is something that is probably a goal a little bit further down the road for EV readiness for Oakdale. Like I said before, the network for charging stations is already pretty comprehensive in the Twin Cities, although it is growing. And in Oakdale, we do have at least one charging station destination at Hy-Vee. So we have 4 level 2 stations and 8 fast charging ports available. So we've already installed some in Oakdale, but to continue to remove barriers to EV ownership, the city may decide that we can install charging stations in other public spaces or public buildings. And once that conversation becomes a little bit more salient, there are a number of different criteria that the city can use to identify what those ideal charging locations may be. I've listed the criteria here in the presentation. Within the report itself, it goes into a little bit more detail about example locations in Oakdale that fall under those criteria. So there are definitely plenty of places where charging stations can be installed, but there are probably a number of other action steps that the city should consider taking before that in order to really build a firm foundation for EV readiness in Oakdale. And then finally, the last EV ready action is to incorporate EVs into the city fleet. There are companies like Fleet Karma that will help us with a fleet assessment in order to identify which, if any, of the vehicles that currently are in the city's fleet may be successfully transitioned to an electric vehicle, one or more. And then they can also help potentially identify places for charging station installation, although that would be addressed after Fleet Karma has completed their study and provided their recommendations for transitioning any part of the fleet. As with most of the other EV ready actions, there is precedent from other cities to help us think through what the use of a Fleet Karma study might be and how the findings from that study may play out in a transition to electric vehicles for the city fleet. So you can see here, there are at least 9 other cities who have conducted a Fleet Karma study. I think that there are probably more. And every one of those cities has provided some best practice learnings to the to a cohort that I'm involved in. They've described how Fleet Karma has been useful in helping the city think through the values that it has when it comes to EVs in its city fleet. And I think that we can, there's some good learnings there to help us see that a Fleet Karma study would be helpful for the city of Oakdale as well. So taking that all under consideration, knowing that EVs are in the comprehensive plan, that the market is primed for expanding ownership of EVs, that we have precedent from state, local, and international, state, national, and international greenhouse gas emissions reduction policy. there are a lot of things that the city can do to become EV ready. And specifically, there are a few action steps that I'm recommending that the EMC support from 2021 to 2023 to facilitate that sense of EV readiness in Oakdale. You can see here in this table that has to do with all 4 categories of EV readiness, but it's honing in specifically on a couple of different zoning and subdivision ordinance areas, on that permitting process, on really making sure that we have electric vehicles incorporated in our planned unit developments, in our sustainability policy, sustainable building policy, in our city financing options, and in promoting the different rebates that Excel Energy has, and then conducting a fleet karma study at some point in the next couple of years. Those are the sort of the goals that I feel like are achievable for the city as we think through our EV readiness as a whole. I am happy to have a conversation with you guys on any reactions to the report itself, on these recommendations. If there are places where you feel like we might need to beef up those recommendations a little bit, or if there is anything missing that you would suggest from a policy standpoint, now is the time to let me know.
Well, thank you, Shannon. I think this you've outlined a great program here for us, and I appreciate all your work putting this together. This, I think that what you've outlined looks certainly achievable and reasonable for us to really accomplish these various actions. Obviously, we'll need a little more, get more specific as we get into each action on as far as having measurable outcomes and also being more time specific over that period of time. But I really like the program. The only thing that you didn't include in that time period was a bulk buy. And I think that is something that we've talked about in the past, is hosting, I think it's through Drive Electric Minnesota, where we bring in various dealerships for electric vehicles, and people can drive them and test them and ask questions about them. So I think hosting a bulk buy event, or actually just being part of the event, I think they already have going on, and I don't know when, if they're going to do that this summer or not, but I would like to see us, if there is one, to try to host one, or at least communicate to people if there's one in a neighboring city.
Yeah, I know that specifically ride and drive events to help EV or facilitate a little bit more conversation around EV ownership and show the residents in general what an EV actually looks like. Those do happen quite a bit throughout the city, or throughout the region, I mean. A bulk buy, I know that Drive Electric Minnesota did facilitate a bulk buy a few years back. I don't know if they have plans on coordinating another one in the future, but it's something that I would keep my eye on, because it does help make EV ownership a little bit more accessible and a little bit cheaper. It's just something where they would have to coordinate it with a number of different cities. And I don't know if that's in the works yet for 2021 or even 2022.
Okay, yeah, I think we wouldn't want to do this on our own. No, we'd want to be part of something that's going on, but I think it's an opportunity for us in that area.
Just to Chair Miller's point, I was really intrigued, Shannon, at this. It's not mysterious, but at this cohort that you've been a part of. I think you said cohort of amazing peers such as yourself, like yourself. and then how you've been convening. And I think, you know, one of the themes I heard in there is really that you drove home was like the values that are helping center us around this, or center us on like how to get ready to think about this, which is that's key to all of this. So just acknowledging that there's a lot of thought leadership, I think, that we don't always hear about, that's happening behind the scenes. So, you know, digging deeper and also acknowledging, Keith, your point about just the intensive time it takes to aggregate all of this data, let alone meet with other people. I think that there may be some more power and maybe not necessarily a bulk buy, but just in terms of leveraging that cohort a little more. I'm feeling like I'm just rambling, but I was just very intrigued by what that could do at the intersection of thought leadership as we get further down and discuss metrics and outcomes and some maybe different KPIs that we want to build into our comp plan, or just the EV readiness study in general. So those are my 3 cents at the moment as I'm still processing all of this info.
The EV ready policies themselves come from best practices from Drive Electric Minnesota, and that cohort, we've been meeting for a while now. I think they've been running for about a year, and includes a number of different cities. So there are cities that are much further along in the process of EV readiness that have plenty of best practices to share with us, and that we can learn quite a bit from as we're trying to figure out what might work specifically for Oakdale, but what's worked for comparable cities in the past.
Yeah. Check that. Yep. I understand that too. And I think the other thing that just struck me is like a third of, and I know those were just 9 specific cities that you just happened to pick, I think, on that one slide. A third of them were all east and or southeast metro. So as you talk about locations, as we process what that can mean within the grid of the Twin Cities that we're in, I'm thinking about that too. Like what's that give? Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions for Shannon from other commissioners?
I am kind of wondering what the next step is. If you had to guess or say what we should do, because we want to continue along this path. So what would you recommend we do first?
I think that building our foundation for EV readiness with the zoning and subdivision ordinance amendments is going to be a really easy first step to take for the city. And again, there's some ideas that other cities have already enacted, but that would be a pretty easy first step for us to take. And then the other pretty easy first step is fleet karma. I consider that to be a low barrier option, just because fleet karma is willing to do the study for us. So they are going to provide a whole host of recommendations for how the city can optimize efficiency within its fleet itself. So we don't even have to do that study ourselves. Fleet karma will do it for us. So again, that's a pretty easy action step that city can take towards becoming EV ready.
And from how I understand it, there's zero cost to Commissioner Zabel's point. We were if we were to need support, monetary support, those two, policy, etc. I mean, that's all zero value items, correct?
The zoning and subdivision ordinances definitely are. I need to do more research into the fleet karma study to understand how that would happen and what costs associated would look like there.
And maybe grants as well. I know there's a lot of state grants for stuff like that. So
yeah, it could be, but to that point, I will be doing that research to understand what that looks like.
Are you submitting this report to the city council and asking for, impressions or suggestions from them?
So the city council was included on the packet email that went out on Friday. They will have seen the report itself. I need to touch base with Bob to understand what my next step is when it comes to presenting this to city council. But I wanted to start with the EMC because it's important to have the commission's support on some of those targeted next action item steps before going to the council so that we can have a really clear argument and a clear vision for what it is that we'd like to do to support EVs in Oakdale.
I would agree in what you're proposing, and we've talked about this a little bit before, Shannon, as zoning and subdivision ordinances would be a good place to start with this. And that will require some city council approval. So I think, I think you have my support for this this program, and we can, I don't know if we need to vote on that to get our official approval of this. But I certainly approve of this, and I guess we can go around to get that approval officially, so that when you do take it to the city council, you can say that you do have full support from the Environmental Management Commission. So I think that'd be a good thing to do. Yeah, I think the fleet karma study is also a great first step here with that, and that really looking at our city fleet and what we can do there. I think that's a great opportunity, and I think that's something that as people see that the city's switching over to electric vehicles and is developing ordinances, infrastructure, it will probably encourage people to look at EVs for their own cars. So the other thing beyond that, I guess that's a great place to start. I'll just mention that the opportunity to provide education to businesses and homeowners and electrical contractors, et cetera, about electric vehicle support equipment. I think that would be good, and something that also would be, I think, maybe after these things, but that we can talk about that more after we get started with this. So I think that unless there are other comments, I can ask for the commissioner's approval. And again, I'd like to just do this individually, since it's difficult to take a voice vote with everybody at the same time. So if you're in support of moving forward with the recommendations from this study, and that this would be taken to the city council for review and their approval as well, say aye. Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Girding?
Aye.
And Commissioner Fink?
Aye.
All right, and I also say aye. And yeah, I really appreciate all the work. And to Commissioner Girding's point, I think having this this group of people from other cities as support, and also to gain knowledge from things they've already done or are in the process of doing. I think that that really serves our city well that you're doing that. And I know commissioners in some of those other cities from various meetings and know they're doing great things in different areas. And it's really a great to have that exchange with them. So thank you for that. So is there anything more that you need on that tonight? No? Okay. Well, great. I really enjoyed reading through that study, and there's a lot more detail than what was presented tonight, and I really appreciate that detail that you provided. So the next item on our agenda is our editorial calendar review. And I have that here somewhere. We're looking at the month of May and also June. And this month was a lot of bicycle events. And let's see, this Friday is Bike to Work Day. And also, I believe this is the National Bike to Work Week. And as well as this month is National Bike Month. So I don't know if, was there anything communicated to area businesses about this?
I will check with Alyssa and see what all she already has communicated and what is on the docket to be communicated. But I know that she was definitely going to get out a couple of I think that she was going to get out some social media posts, and there might be something in the Oakdale update as well. But let me double check with her on what is happening this month.
Okay, great. Yeah, one thing I enjoyed seeing in the report was the top 10 businesses by employees, looking at where there may be good opportunities for charging stations for employers to put in charging stations. But that really would apply to any of the, business notifications we go out, that if we can hit those top 10 employers, that would be great. And the other thing I thought about that is, there's probably smaller employers in some of the big business parks. And I don't know if there's a way to communicate to the owners of those business parks or something. And if they have something going with their tenants in those business parks, because they're big and but they probably, individually the businesses in those business parks don't make the top 10, but when you aggregate them, they probably are pretty large. So so for June, looks like that is Active Lifestyle Month. And so again, there's bicycling, there's National Trails Day. And in Oakdale, Adopt a Park program, Oakdale Community Walk, and I'm not sure when is that Oakdale Community Walk. Is any?
I'll ask Alyssa that too.
It's already started. I think it started April 1st. It extends all summer long, and you register at the Discovery Center desk, and then you keep track of the miles that you walked, but you're supposed to walk them in the nature preserve. I think that's what the Oakdale Community Walk is. At least it's the one that I participate in.
Okay, yeah. We'll have to check that out.
It occurs every year, And Nathan at the Discovery Center is in charge of it. And then if you go look on the door, they list all the people that are participating and how many miles they've walked so far. And then at the end, you get a gift card depending on how many miles you walk.
And there is the Landscape Revival Native Plant Expo and Market. Is that something at the Discovery Center or is that someplace else?
One year, not last year, but the year before, they had it at City Hall.
Okay.
Maybe Kevin knows if there's one this year.
Yes, June 12th, I believe, at City Hall. Let me get the details here. I just had it today. And if anybody has any questions about it, Councilmember Swedberg is very involved with it. So she would definitely be the one to ask. So Saturday, June 12th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Oakdale City Hall. So 1584 Hadley. But beyond that, I don't know what plants are being offered or anything. So Colleen would be the one to ask.
Great. Yeah, because I think that's important that, you know, that we are supporting native plantings. I know we have gone to mainly native plants in our gardens to, you know, help pollinators and butterflies and things. So it's good to get that out. And all right. Any other ideas from other commissioners on things that we could include over the next couple of months?
I do have something for September, but that does not include June or May and June. So I'm happy to hold that, Chair Miller, for later.
Okay. Great. Yeah. And if you think of things anytime this for the year as it comes up towards that date, let us know. Because even, you know, I think we could be talking, you know, if there were things in July to start thinking about that too at this point to get ahead of it.
Sure, thanks, will do. I'll send you something, Shannon, offline. It's on the heels of our conversation about EV readiness, and there's a World EV Day. Hey, check it out.
All right. Next item are commissioner updates, and related to our EV study is there's another program, renewable energy program called Grow Solar Twin Cities, it's called this year. And we had our meeting. I just today got the final draft for our request for proposal that will be going out to various developers. And we're looking at something below $2.70 per watt. So the price continues to go down. I think that it's like $2.76 a watt is the average cost for solar now in the Twin Cities. So, so we're looking to better that with the group buy. And the one thing they were asking for so that developers know there's support for this program is that if cities will support it or commissions. And so I said, well, I think I've talked about it with our Oakdale Environmental Management Commission, and I think that they would support it. So I'll ask you this evening for your support. And I will be the one directly supporting it, but we can all support it, and maybe the city can support it. And tomorrow, our meeting with the city council, I'll formally ask for their support for that. Good. I think it's good if cities also support that. Then they know that, you know, they have customers out there, potential customers, and so yeah, I think that they said 3 weeks probably they'll give before they will have developers selected. They'll give them 2 weeks to prepare a bid and then a week for getting back to them with any questions and evaluation. So it's getting pushed out into June now, probably mid-June before we'll have program going. But I hope that there'll be enough time so that they can get all these installations in this year yet. I think the cutoff is the end of September, but they usually allow, if people have talked to them before the end of September, they'll allow them to decide in October. So, but depending on when winter starts, it can get pretty tight to get them completed this year. So I think that's, well, I guess I'll ask for your formal support again. And so we'll go around, and if you support that that will be included in the request for proposal. It just says we support. And also want to point out that it says all of the steering committee members and supporters are not part of this group buy, that they are just supporting it. And so there's no the contract is between the Midwest Renewable Energy Association and the developer. So we don't have any legal problems if somebody is unhappy with with something. So, and the same with anybody who buys a system. It's between the developer and the buyer. Okay, so if you support having us showing support for this program in their request for proposal, say aye.
Chair Miller, can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah.
I want to suggest that the EMC stays on the right side here. Since the proposal and the information wasn't included in the packet, I would suggest that the committee does not take a stance on it tonight. Just, we have to go through our process. So out of fairness to all commissioners who might not be as informed on this subject as you are, we probably should go through that process of staff sending materials out to everybody and putting it on an agenda.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion.
Okay, we'll not vote on that, and we'll get the materials out to you and in the next, well, hopefully soon, because the request for proposal will be going out. So, but I just received the final today, so we'll get that out to you. So if you could respond fairly quickly to that, that would be good. All right, so any other commissioner updates?
I have a few council updates if this would be an appropriate time, Mr. Chair. Oh, you're on mute, Guy.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sure. So just a few tonight. We have some personnel changes happening at City Hall. If you've watched any of the meetings lately or looked at any of our council packets, there will be some new faces coming soon and, in the next few months. The city council recently hired a finance director. This is a new position within the city. In the past, it was combined with a few other roles. And as the city grows and we take on new endeavors, it just became too much for one person. So we split the roles out. So our new finance director, his name is Jason Zimmerman. He's actually on the finance staff at North St. Paul. So it's a close transition for him right next door, but we are very excited to have him aboard. He will be starting in mid-June, I believe. And as soon as he's on board, he's going to be diving right into the 2022 budget work. So we're a little behind where we would normally be with the budget process, but we are confident that with extra hands on deck, we'll be able to get that work done on time. The other personnel change that we will be having at City Hall is Police Chief Bill Sullivan submitted his letter for retirement. We've all known that this was coming for a long time, but we definitely didn't want to receive it. We all love Chief Sullivan. He does a tremendous job for our city, and he's been in that role almost 34 years. And so we've accepted his retirement, and the next steps is the city will be bringing on a third party search firm to help us with that process. It's the same firm that we used for the finance director position as well as the city administrator position last summer. So we have a lot of experience with them. More importantly, they have a lot of experience with us. So that'll be starting in the next. Well, actually, we're going to be meeting with them right after the commission meetings tomorrow night. So we're starting right away. As Chair Miller mentioned, we are meeting tomorrow night at the Discovery Center. The EMC's time slot is 5:30 to 6 p.m. So this is our annual opportunity to check in with all of the commissions, talk about whatever's on your mind, talk about what projects will be coming up for the year ahead. As we, with the change this year, usually we would do it first thing in the new year. We pushed it back so it could coincide with the kickoff of the budget process, so we can have that dollars and cents conversation. So I'm not sure if the EMC has a specific agenda we're going to be rolling through. I know some of the commissions did put forward their own agenda that they wanted to follow, and there's no right or wrong. We can keep it casual and informal. Certainly. So I hope to see everybody there, 5:30 at the Discovery Center. And then last item on my list is regarding virtual meetings. The City Council will be talking about what commission meetings look like going forward post-COVID. There's been some proposed legislation to change rules. The legislature is kind of in limbo right now, so we're not sure how that's shaking out. There's also been a legal opinion from the Commissioner of Administration at the state clarifying when commissions like this and city councils can meet virtually. So we're still trying to digest all of that, but as soon as we know how Oakdale commissions will be operating in the future, we will be sure to let everybody know. And with that, happy to answer any questions. Quiet group. I love it. Well, if anybody needs anything, just send me an email. Happy to chat anytime. Oh, actually, I have one last thing. After the last meeting, I took the feedback from Commissioner Girding about the Minnesota Green Corps program and forward that on to our city administrator. And so we're going to be working with staff to figure out how we can utilize that program here in Oakdale. So City Administrator Volkers has experience working with them when she was the city manager in Moorhead. So she's well aware of it, and we'll figure out a way to capitalize on that in Oakdale. So thank you to Commissioner Girding for bringing that forward.
That's wonderful. I do have one question, Councilman Zawa. You said when, to your point about meetings for commissions and everything that's in limbo right now, you said virtual. Is that still what you meant?
Yeah. So
maybe I just missed the context. I apologize.
Yeah. So the manner in which we host these meetings is solely governed by state law. They set the rules and everybody just has to play by it. The ability for us to meet solely on Zoom is directly tied to the local pandemic emergency that we have in place. Once that goes away, either at the city level or at the state level, the rules change. And so we're trying to figure out, the state is talking about keeping those rules in place, whether there's a local or state emergency or not. There's also been some gray area about, well, if the city council is meeting in person, which we have been, the whole time, do commissions have to follow that? Do they not? Most of this is just a byproduct of COVID. Everybody had to respond pretty quickly. And if it's worked for cities, we've just kept going with it. And so now that we're kind of coming down the other side of that mountain with COVID, everybody's gonna have to figure out what they're gonna do. So right now it's a big to be determined.
Thank you for clarifying.
Well, thank you for the updates there, Councilman Zabel. Appreciate that. And are there any other things, updates, things that you'd like to bring up that were not on the agenda this evening?
Well, I am kind of wondering how it's going to go tomorrow night.
Well,
We'll see. No, I mean, similar to what we've done in the past, we're hoping as many people can join us in person as possible. I believe we will have Zoom available as well. But, we'll just kick it off with quick introductions and, open it up as an open forum. Whatever people want to talk about, we're happy to dive into. I don't know if Shannon has a short presentation that she'll be leading us in. If so, great. If not, I'm sure all of the commissioners will jump in with topics that they would like to talk about. But for the most part, we just want to keep it casual. We want to talk about what the commission has been working on, what you want to be working on the year ahead, and just so we can kind of keep all of that in mind as we're having that money conversation. So it can go any direction that commission members would like.
Thank you.
And Keith may mention this too, but I did share a memo to be included in the packet for tomorrow's meeting. That is a very truncated version of the EMC's 2021 work plan. My understanding is that most of the conversation tomorrow will just sort of center around what that work plan looks like and the different topics that are included, and basically what we feel like we can feasibly accomplish the rest of the year.
yeah, I think Shannon and I have talked about this, and the focus will be on the work plan, which, I can go through and summarize, walk through that, and then open it up to really to questions as go through that. And, in the past, we've kind of also talked about our accomplishments from the previous year. And since 2020 was kind of a washout with COVID, I think the main accomplishment is that we continued our Green Step Cities Level 5 and are hoping that we will, with the meeting our metrics again, showing improvement in our metrics and certain indicators will allow us to stay at this level, at that level 5 for this year. So, I think we'll, and if we also plan, to listen to what feedback we get from city council and the mayor. I think that's important that we understand what's on their minds and about our work. And, it's pretty, city council, we've have good rapport with them, I think. We don't ask for a lot of money and do good things for the environment. So, generally they're pretty happy.
I think that's the problem. You guys got to ask for more money. Don't let all those parks people take it. Come on.
Well, okay. If you say
It'll be a fight with the parks people.
I live across the street from one of them, don't you know it? Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I do have one other random thing, Chair Miller, if we're closing it. Excuse me. So just as an experiential quality control check-in, a while back, I know we had committed to checking in on one another as it relates to the Adopt a Drain program. And so I just wanted to do a human check-in and how's the first part of the year gone? Everybody have what they need? It's pretty simple. Just a pulse on everybody. Where's everybody at?
I had completed it over the winter. And completed, I shouldn't even use that term. I was assigned to February and it was buried. So I'm not sure it's useful I had emailed in, I'm not sure if it's useful to really identify months that we know are snow months in Minnesota. I think that the schedule might be better if we maybe started in April, which isn't safe, but safer for that giant pile at town or city hall, and then maybe stopped in, like maybe take off January, February, March, something like that. Cause it's just buried and it's not really useful.
Yeah, in my case, everything was frozen solid. So there were little things sitting in the drain, but I couldn't free them.
Right. No, that's fantastic feedback. I would say that March was pretty questionable too, Gretel, to your point. So yeah, maybe we do we could consider a seasonal calendar.
Yeah, I think spring and fall are the big hits, right? That's when your leaves in your trash. So anything that's sweeping into the drains while the melt off is happening, and then the leaves from spring are just an atrocity. So I think that those two things are the killers for us, and then just summer stuff. I did adopt my local drain though, and I kept that clean this winter, so I'm guilt free.
No, that's a good point. And yeah, we'll have to look at the schedule for next year, just not doing the first 3 months of the year, probably. Because there could, December, depending on the year, you could still have, the oak trees lose their leaves late, and there could be stuff to clean. Yeah. Okay. That's great. I'm glad you brought that up, Commissioner Girding. I think also reminds me of where I fall on the schedule. So that was a good reminder. All right. So last call here. Anything else we need to talk about? All right, hearing none, I would look for, well, first of all, I would say that our next meeting is June 21st. So we'll be meeting again on third Monday. Yes, and look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of adjourning our May 17th, 2021 meeting of the Oakdale Environmental Management Commission, say aye. Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Girding?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Fink?
Aye.
And I also say aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you for being here, Commissioner Zabel, or Councilman Zabel.
I will see everybody tomorrow, I hope.
Yeah, I'll be there.